Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Shawn Jackson, Senior Director of Events, Education, and Give Back for the Fragrance Foundation. I work closely with our President, Linda Levy, our entire team, and the Fragrance Foundation membership to ensure that we are making an impact by taking measured, actionable steps to drive change and make our industry truly representative of today's society and population. Today's Moving Forward Together session is our second annual Industry Perspectives webinar, a significant part of our industry-wide Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative, #FragranceForwardTFF. So welcome to #FragranceForwardTFF, Moving Forward Together. It is now my pleasure to introduce Linda Levy, President of the Fragrance Foundation. Linda?
Thank you, Shawn, and welcome everyone. Thank you for being with us today. #FragranceForwardTFF is the Fragrance Foundation's formalized DEI framework. It is a program with multiple elements that is providing a sustainable platform for the entire industry to share and exchange ideas, experiences, and perspectives. We are creating real-time opportunities and access for historically excluded communities. Since launching a year ago today, #FragranceForwardTFF is now considered an industry standard, providing opportunities in the areas of mentorship, recruitment, and career development, as well as scholarship and education. In just 1 year, through #FragranceForwardTFF, we have created the first ever Fragrance Diversity Scholarship Program at FIT right here in New York, providing $100,000 annually to deserving undergraduate and graduate students. We launched Sense of Success. It is a career development workshop series, and it premiered at Spelman College. And now this October, it went to Spelman College again, as well as the City College of New York, Rutgers University, Florida State, and in the future, we will roll out to other institutions across the USA. We presented our very first webinar on industry perspectives last year on this very date, featuring diverse leaders from LVMH, the Fluid Project, World of Chris Collins, and Givaudan, with over 3,000 participants. This year, we have even more viewers. We galvanized the industry, including TFF's 100+ member companies, to take the TFF DEI pledge that calls for a commitment to being fragrance forward in hiring practices, advancement opportunities, mentorship, recruitment, and inclusivity. We have expanded our audience and community by reaching out to new sources and media partners who speak directly to the consumers we have not reached previously. Our objective remains consistent: to include and celebrate all of the USA diverse population and underserved communities. Today, we are pleased to present Moving Forward Together, an extraordinary inside look at the fragrance industry, decoding DEI and sharing insights from some of the leading voices from a variety of perspectives. Together, they are all driving and moving us forward. Thank you to our friends and colleagues, Bernardo Möller, Nicole Monson, and Shawn Outler for being with us today. But before we begin, I am beyond thrilled to introduce our moderator, Arthel Neville. Arthel is a trailblazing broadcaster in news and programming whose own career and talents have set industry standards, broken barriers, and shown us all that with determination, purpose, and passion, our goals can be achieved. She began her career as a reporter while still a journalism major in college. She literally went national in her 20s, producing and hosting her interview show for E! She launched the popular entertainment program Extra, becoming the first Black female in early prime syndication. Arthel is currently a weekend anchor for Fox News, covering politics, foreign policy, national, and breaking news. And FYI, Arthel is a major fragrance lover, and we are delighted to officially welcome her to the fragrance community.
Well, thank you so much. I do smell good, I must say. It's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you, Linda, and the Fragrance Foundation for your consistent, remarkable work, your commitment to making a difference, and for your dedication to supporting and providing education opportunities for future industry leaders, all while galvanizing the fragrance industry to follow your example. Thank you, Shawn, for being a force for all things Fragrance Foundation. Thank you, Helen Shelton, Global Chief Diversity Officer, Finn Partners. Helen is the glue. Her tireless work makes the magic come together. In fact, it doesn't happen without her. When Helen asks, I say yes. Also, thank you to everyone participating and watching the Moving Forward Together webinar. And now, of course, a warm welcome and big thank you to our impressive panel. Bernardo Möller, founder and creative director, House of Beau. Nicole Monson, Senior Vice President, Equity and Engagement, the Estée Lauder Companies. And Shawn Outler, Chief Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Officer, Macy's, Inc. So right now, each panelist will tell us about their journey in the fragrance industry and the inspiration that landed them here. Bernardo will start, followed by Nicole, then Shawn. Bernardo.
So how did I start my journey? You know, I'm completely new to this industry, obviously, but I've always been a fragrance fanatic since I was 13. I turned 39 next month. But whenever I answer this question I always kind of separate it into two: what I did for work and then what I did as my passion. And fortunately, I was able to turn my passion into my work eventually. But I started in real estate I've worked in real estate for 16 years, and architecture, design, and fragrance was always my passion, and it was my creative outlet, really. Architecture and design was actually like the thing that I had with my dad that kept us close. And I always say this because I think it's really interesting. I remember when I was really young, my dad always told me, Bernardo, if you don't know what your passion is, choose a job where you're gonna work the least and earn the most, because that's gonna give you enough time to have many life experiences and eventually figure out what your passion is, right? And when he passed away from COVID in 2020, and that really changed everything for me, like what I wanted to do with my life, my view on life and death. And at that point, I realized that he had such an exemplifying life. To this day, it's such an inspiration to me because he died happy. And the reason he died happy was because he was always following his passion to the very end. And so, of course, when he passed away, naturally, it was, for me, I wanted to figure out what my true passion was. And fragrance was always there since I was 13. And I think there was, of course, it was a little intimidating at the beginning, but I guess at that point, there was nothing to lose. It was more like a question of, can I be successful at this? And so we started House of Beau. And as many of you know, we have been out 1 year, and it's been overwhelming to receive the support from so many people in the industry, and also like our customers, that just to see that the reactions from people and connect to our message, that's been very, very heartwarming.
Well, you are certainly making your father proud, as you have throughout your life, and you continue to do so. And your fragrance is so beautiful, and I love your story, and I love that your heart is truly in what you do, and it comes across not only in your words and your description of your journey, but also in the fragrances themselves. So thank you. Nicole?
So thank you to the Fragrance Foundation for hosting this amazing conversation. I stepped into the industry just about 8 years ago by accident, actually. After spending several years in financial services and practicing law in large and mid-sized firms and working in manufacturing, I got the opportunity to step into something that I felt connected to my entire life, an industry, though, that I felt there was no place for me necessarily as a practicing lawyer. So I joined the Estée Lauder Companies 8 years ago to lead their employment law group, and then took on some additional responsibility leading the ethics and compliance function and data privacy. And the current role that I'm in, in 2020, like lots of other companies, we took a look at ourselves and, realized there was some gaps that we needed to address. And for us, equity and inclusion and diversity is a part of our DNA. It's just who we are. We were founded by a woman 75 years ago. 84% of our workforce happens to be women, but we recognized that there were still some places that we needed to do some work, and particularly in the equity space. And so that led me to my current role. The company launched a function called Equity and Engagement in 2021. So I've only been in this role about a year, but the point of the role was really to build greater equity and representation across our business, starting with our employees, but also reaching our consumers. And the idea was to put together a function that is really holistic and really intentional about doing this work, and really making sure that as we do it, we're doing it in a way that's sustainable, that it's not just sort of a check the box and sort of one and done, that it really is sustainable for the country, so for the company. So I get to do what I believe to be very challenging, but absolutely rewarding work in a space that I think there's huge opportunity for people of color, for people in diverse backgrounds. And I get to try to make a change every day. So I'm loving what I'm doing.
No, and it shows in your face. It's, again, just hearing your stories, just like Bernardo, it's just coming across. And it's so important that you're able to do something that you're passionate about. And, just like music is universal, so is fragrance. So this is beautiful. Shawn.
Yeah, so thank you to Linda and Charnay and the Fragrance Foundation for the invitation to be here. It's really an honor to be on this panel and to be with everyone today. I've had the good fortune to be in the retail business for more than 30 years. And in that time, I've seen and led a lot of transformational change, developing multiple strategies across numerous buying and merchandising functions that impact the business and our customers' lives. At Macy's Inc., I identified and developed merchandising strategies focused on capturing the attention and loyalty of the emerging multicultural market. In particular, in 2011, I founded the Workshop at Macy's, an industry-leading vendor development program designed to educate and prepare underrepresented business owners to succeed at scale and drive innovation in the supplier base. The success of the workshop and the decades of experience leading change across the merchandising organization led to my current role as Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, which I took on in 2018, really prior to everything that we know happened in 2020. But in this role, I leveraged my business experience to establish the company's first Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Center of Excellence, craft a bold vision and charter to advance and embed forward-thinking DEI practices into business strategy, advance growth and innovation while driving material impact for our stakeholders and society at large. So as a company, we're leveraging data to shape D&I strategy and establish clear metrics and milestones to drive accountability and enterprise-wide. So, I'm really excited that we are making incredible impact and going bolder with our recent launch social purpose platform, Mission Everyone. We're directing $5 billion of our spend through 2025 to impact people and our communities and the planet, specifically uplifting and supporting underrepresented groups, including designers, brands, and businesses to create a brighter future for all. So I'm excited about where we are. I'm excited about the work. And for me, it's been a career-long journey.
And the journey continues. Wonderful. So I also want to say many thanks to all of you who shared your questions in advance. While we can't respond to each question, we did select questions that are aligned with the theme of today's program. Moving forward together is such a fitting theme for this discussion. This next question is for all of our panelists. What are some of the challenges that people of diverse backgrounds face in an industry that is predominantly white, male, and European? Bernardo.
So I mean, if I were to start from the beginning, there's many things from my childhood that would have led me to believe that I wouldn't be able to do something like this. But I think it's finding your voice in an industry that's predominantly, as you said, white European storytelling. It can be very intimidating. And of course, like I said before, I didn't have the courage to do it until my dad passed away. But I think that staying true to my heritage and my point of view, that was key when we were creating House of Bo. And I mean, I'm half Mexican and half American, and I think House of Bo really reflects that beautifully. On one hand, my inspirations are both aesthetically and scent-wise come from my childhood, but on the other hand, I feel like launching in America has given me the freedom to speak about a lot of things that I culturally would not have been able to do so easily in Mexico. Like whether it's inclusion, sexuality, or authenticity, spirituality without any religion. So I think that these are like not very popular topics in our Latin American countries. So that's really one of the things that in the US allowed me to do this. I also believe that there is so much talent in minority groups that's what makes this talent so different from others, right? The emotional, experiential, authentic, and deep part of it is really what makes us so unique. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that same thing, that the kind of rejection or pain or repression in a lot of ways. There's so much feelings and creativity that can come from that, right? I think that that sometimes hard moments really push you to find your own voice. And yeah.
It's beautiful, so beautifully put. Shawn?
Yeah, when I think about some of the challenges people of diverse backgrounds face, the number one issue that comes to mind for me is access. To diversify the industry, we must break down the barriers that impede diverse people from entering the industry to begin with. So this includes mentorships, scholarship programs, opportunities to apprentice, or even, take part in internships. After access really is knowledge, right? So where we see underrepresented people hit roadblock more often is access to the tools and the resources that will help them succeed in this business. This is everything from sourcing and marketing to capital access, right? And really exposure to customers. I always talk about this access to capital, customers, and really, education as being really some of the three things that I think are important. So this lack of knowledge and access to resources is one of the challenges we've been tackling for years. with the workshop at Macy's and continue to figure out how to, get at, as well as when you think about, the people, the internships and the opportunity to just learn about the business in general and just really have the right level of connection across the industry.
Also important. So far, finding your voice and access. Nicole.
So a couple things. I agree with Shawn and Bernardo 100%. A couple things I would also say and add in terms of challenges. And I would just say it's the systems that continue to oppress and discriminate against those, of diverse backgrounds, which was part of why my COE was created, to really try to break down those barriers in those systems. And I'd certainly say for us, as we've moved into this hybrid work environment, micro inequities and the need to be, super sensitive, hypersensitive, I would say, to micro inequities. Another challenge I think is related.
If I may jump in, please explain micro inequity.
Yeah. So they are often subtle, what feels like an indirect form of discrimination that hits really hard. So, for example, making an assumption about somebody's identity, refusing to use the correct pronoun with somebody, scheduling meetings on somebody's, religious holiday, things like that that are subtle, but actually hit really, really, really hard. And I think that over the last couple of years, we've seen, in the industry, those increase. A couple other things I would add that I think are important is this lack of representation, and particularly at leadership levels. When you're coming into the industry, or when you are in the industry, it's super challenging to feel like you have a sense of belonging when you look around and you don't really see anybody who looks like you, either your peer or somebody at a higher level. And it can be demoralizing and certainly demotivating. And if we think about it, I think just 9% of CEOs are women, and I think about 6 Black CEOs. And so for people of color and women to look around in the industry, I think it's challenging. And the last thing I would say is just around shouldering the burden of educating others. It's exhausting to feel like that you have to continuously educate others about your experience, and the burden of trying to explain to people the experiences of underrepresented communities and reliving the traumas. And let's call it what it is. The trauma of discrimination can be a lot, and certainly has been a lot. And then the final thing I'd say is having to face the repercussions from sort of the dominant culture when you call out the bias, or they feel attacked or challenged or confronted. It's clearly not fair and not right. And people of diverse backgrounds, certainly over the last several years, have been shouldering this burden, and it's a challenge and continues to be a challenge.
It's a burden and a balancing act.
It's a burden and a balancing act.
Nicole and Shawn, I want to stick with you on this next question. Listen, the last few years have placed a spotlight, of course, on DEI across multiple sectors. What are some of the more effective strategies you've seen? Shawn?
Yeah, I'll just kind of piggyback and on something that Nicole just said. Really, I think where companies have been effective and when they've tapped into the diverse communities in the right way, right? So listening to understand better what's impacting these communities and how they can address them. We've had ERGs for years, but we've seen a different level of activation with our ERGs and advocacy as it relates to them. So I think most recently about what happened in Buffalo and Uvalde and the Dobbs decision, our ERGs have really stood up, and we've allowed them to take the lead in driving conversations and bringing those who don't really understand how these different societal issues have impacted the community to bring and create community, bring folks together to have a conversation, for those to express how they feel and what this has meant to them, but for others to listen and to be educated. And so, we've kind of really created this environment, and I think that's where some organizations have been successful. I think overall, listen, everyone was running to the table in 2020 to make a declaration about what they were going to do and who we're going to be. I think the companies who did it well really went back to their values and said, here's who we are. and made a decision whether or not, to be anti-racist or not was aligned with those values. Reinforcing that with everybody in their organization and stating clearly who they were as it relates to that was really important. But those who really did it well, followed that up with real action, held their people accountable, and put real measurement around it. So it really is about activating the colleagues in your workforce, standing for something, making a declaration, but the follow-up around action and driving accountability around that, really important, because that's how you impact the business you do every day. And I think where the real change happens is when you start to operate and change the systems in which we operate to reflect a more diverse and inclusive and equitable environment. And that is across all areas of the organization and the company.
And Nicole, do you think these systems are truly starting to change, and will they be able to maintain the change?
I think they're changing slowly. I don't think they're changing everywhere, but I think they are changing slowly. I think, what Shawn said around, and want to punctuate this point because I think she's 100% correct, around accountability. What we've seen that works is when you actually put in real governance and structure around accountability. That's why my COE was created, right? Part of it was to ensure that accountability. And I do think that slowly they are breaking down. There's still a lot of education and a lot of conversation that really has to happen. But I do think, Arthel, that it is happening, and it will continue to happen. I think the important thing is, and I'll say this and probably say it again, that we remember that this isn't just a moment, that it really is a movement, and that we need to continue to be focused, and the action piece of it. Our consumers, our employees, our investors are holding us accountable 100%. And on the ERG front, the same sort of happening with us. Our employees, our investors, and certainly our consumers feel empowered, I feel like, in a way that maybe they didn't a few years ago. And so, they are holding us accountable 100%. And action is really all they want at this point. There's been a lot of talk in the industry for a lot of years. I think time out is for that, and it is now time for action.
Action speaks louder than words. Shawn, if you can piggyback on what Nicole just said, I'm going to ask you, how can the industry be more accountable in driving DEI across all levels, from scent making to marketing, the creative side, retail, and beyond?
Yeah, I think, just to continue, we must create a holistic plan that addresses all levels of the issue and with clear, measurable goals. And this includes internal and external audience and stakeholders. So Nicole mentioned all of them. But for example, at Macy's, our DEI strategy has 5 focus areas of impact. It's our colleagues, it's our customers, our suppliers, our community, and marketing. And for each area, we have opportunities we are tackling along with targets we are working to reach. So additionally, there must be alignment, right? And this word accountability, I can't stress it enough, across all levels of the organization on these goals. So we believe strongly in accountability. We just published our human capital report for the 2nd year, and it talks about how we show up and support our customers, communities, and each other. It provides the metrics, the insights, the transparency around the topics of culture and engagement, D&I, talent development, and the future work and pay equity, which I think is really important, and as well as ensuring the safety of customers and our colleagues, our give back, and driving the systemic change on critical issues like inequality and social justice. So we've got to go past the awareness and the education, which is ongoing, but really get to the point where you're really driving people to take action and then hold them accountable, but be public about it, share it, be very clear so that everyone understands what you're marching towards. Again, we have aspirations. A lot of companies have aspirations, but you really need to solidify that and nail that with true accountability and real goals and metrics that everyone can see you marching towards, driving to a better outcome for all.
Aspirations, accountability, action. Truly, truly wonderful insights. And it's great to get these perspectives on making the industry diverse, authentically at every level. So with that in mind, could each of you address this next question? How can advocacy, allyship, and activism play a role in advancing diversity in the industry? And how do these play a role in attracting and engaging consumers from historically excluded backgrounds? Bernardo, you're first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think of course, I could not agree more on accountability. For me, I think having the right people in positions of power or important positions, for example, Linda, having people like that in these positions that are checking that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing is super important. And that are also promoting and setting an example, right? I think if more people that have these kind of positions are truly understanding this will kind of water down to many other levels. And the other question is, I mean, I think that after COVID, again, I think that a lot of people had this necessity for different experiences. And I feel like things have changed after COVID. A lot of people are much more interested in inclusion. And it's almost like become a lot more part of the norm. If we look back, maybe, I don't know, even like 3 or 4 years, like I think we are advancing. There's still a lot to do, but I don't know. I think having a place, a platform to put your voice for other people to be heard, I think is super important.
It's very important. And Linda, again, really thank you. Linda Levy, what you're doing really is incredible. It really is making a difference. We applaud your efforts, and I know that you'll continue to forge ahead on this particular path. Nicole, let me go back to you.
So I do think there is absolutely a place for advocacy and allyship and activism. I think there are a couple things, maybe 3 things we need to be focused on. Coming alongside nonprofits who are really being innovative and working to drive out systemic barriers and really drive systemic change in their communities. You know, companies or our company is apolitical, and you know, there's always sort of a conversation around how much activism, how much can you actually step in and advocate. And we believe that our customers, their consumers, are just like our colleagues and their people, and DEI matters to them as well. And so you have to step in and advocate for them. Listening and learning, Shawn mentioned this earlier, and I think this is a huge part of sort of the advocacy and the allyship that has become so increasingly important, is continuing to listen and to create real spaces, authentic spaces, where people can actually speak up and be heard and help you understand how to advocate on their best behalf. And the last thing I would say, and in terms of advocacy, is, you know, supporting first and foremost for us our employees, trying to create equity within our own 4 walls so that we can do a better job of creating equity outside of the organization. It takes persistence, no question. It's not enough, we recognize, to just attract talent. We got to work really hard to retain the talent, and part of that is, you know, creating opportunities for them, for moments that actually matter to them in the communities that actually reach our consumers. And the last thing I would say, and Bernardo started to go here, and I'm going to go here, is to recognize that this work is cross-functional. It can't be left to those of us who are DEI subject matter experts. It can't be left to Linda or to Bernardo to get all of this done. We need to make sure that our leaders, that folks from marketing, folks from product development actually have a seat at the table when we are having these conversations to really try to help drive the change in that advocacy and activism space.
Yeah, because otherwise it seems that this is, on the one hand, coming across as such a major platform and mission and movement, as you said earlier, Shawn, but also you don't want, without what you just mentioned, Nicole, it becomes marginalized. So is it real? Do you really mean it or not? Shawn?
Yeah, I agree with everything said so far. Advocacy, allyship, and activism all play an important role in driving diversity forward in the industry. And our mission, really, that we established in 2018, our vision, excuse me, is to be the beacon of diversity, equity, and inclusion for our colleagues, our customers, and communities. That's a bold statement. But it really is about and rooted in the fact that our consumers are choosing to do business with companies who live up to their core values and take a position on important issues. And so with these rising expectations, we've got to figure out how to meet them and in the right authentic way. So from an advocacy perspective, we and our CEO has stood in this space for quite some time. CEO Action for Racial Equity was established a couple of years ago, and we're one of 20 companies who are leading those efforts to change policy as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the Black community. We know there's going to be a ripple effect in terms of the other underrepresented communities, but we took a stand there and we're really advocating for this change. And some would say in some ways that's activism as well. Part of that is around business diversity. I talked about the workshop at Macy's. We've been on this journey about diversifying the supply chain with real effort since 2010, 2011. So we're thinking about how to really take it to another level now. We focused on the education piece. We've really started to bring some of those brands and vendors into the fold and grow with them. But we're talking about accelerating growth and having meaningful impact across the industry. So more to come, but we're taking a real leadership role when it comes to that. So we believe there's a lot of space and room for some of us to step out, to take a leadership role, and really just acknowledge that as the customer, right? And, those who are shopping and living in this country are shifting. We've got to figure out how to meet them where they are, because they're not going to really turn back from their expectations. It's only going to get a lot more, I'd say, intense as we move forward. And this idea of allyship, we're talking about now active allyship. And I think it really is important to put that word in front of it. So we're challenging ourselves internally to do that. We're taking our most senior leaders and having them sponsor our ERGs, that they can really partner with them to bring forth any of their concerns, their issues, their business ideas, if you will, to even impact us, our business strategy on a much larger scale. So we'll continue to be a standard moving forward. Again, our customers are driving our efforts on this, but we will truly be advocates, be better allies, and in some cases be activists as it relates to this work.
And when you're doing that, really quickly follow up, Shawn, that doesn't mean you're turning your back to something else. That means you're advocating for this without dismissing or ignoring others.
Yeah, it is about, like, I go back to our social purpose, and it's such a good question because it's one that I have to continually remind people, is that we are creating a brighter future with bold representation for all. That means we're broadening our aperture to continue to increase and involve more voices that impact our business. Because at one point it was a little narrow. So it's about all, but making space for all and making sure that we have all folks, who are reflective of our customer at all of the different junctures and important parts of our business. So you're absolutely right. It isn't about excluding anyone. It's really including more into the equation. So I appreciate the question.
Terrific, terrific. And this is a natural lead into our final question for the panel, which is, what can we do as a community to support #FragranceForwardTFF? Bernardo.
I think really, in a way, understanding the value of different opinions, but truly understanding it. Like, I think that when you understand that to have evolution in any kind of sector, you need to have different opinions and different experiences. Otherwise, you're going to stay stagnant. And when you truly understand this, I think that naturally people are just going to look for different opinions from different backgrounds, from different ethnicities and different life experiences. So I think it's kind of educating in a way, more and more people in powerful positions or in important positions to teach that message of inclusivity in a way that is not just because it has to be done. It's more like really explaining to people why it should be across all sectors. I don't know if
I totally, no, you totally made sense. You know, and you're talking about encouraging leaders to teach, but the teachers, those leaders have to also listen, because if we don't listen and have compassion for all the walks of life that you're talking about, Bernardo, then we don't get the results that we all here hope to get. Nicole, we'll go to you next.
I think it starts with what we're doing right here today. Having courageous and transparent and sometimes uncomfortable conversations, and this conversation really being a critical solutions-based conversation about DEI and our industry. And I think that, you know, if we continue to support each other, we continue to celebrate our success, but continue to be honest about where maybe we've not been so successful, and the things that need to evolve, and the things that need to change. And I do think that we have to continue to invest in grassroots organizations and invest in entrepreneurs like Bernardo who are coming into the industry, and invest in a really meaningful way. You know, some of the initiatives that Shawn mentioned, those are tangible. That's really real. And some of the same things that we're doing at the Estée Lauder Companies. But I think that we got to hold hands and all agree and, you know, move forward in this. And I think the only way that we're ever truly going to be successful in a sustainable way is if we do hold hands and move forward together exactly the way we are today.
Absolutely. And you know, when you hold hands, sometimes those palms can get sweaty and a little uncomfortable, but you don't let go.
That's
Shawn?
right.
Yeah, I would say join us, you know, in creating meaningful, impactful, sustainable, you know, and measurable and transparent goals as it relates to this work. I would also say, let's reframe the conversation. This to me feels like and is always about the opportunity to understand each other better, the opportunity to discover new businesses and get at new categories, and to really expand and grow our industry at large. So, you know, I just say it is about all, but boy, what a huge, incredible opportunity we have to just elevate what we do every day, to include more voices, and just to grow. So I think, you know, changing who we are, we always evolve. This is the next kind of a foray in our industry. Let's embrace it in a really meaningful and positive way for greater change and impact for all.
Absolutely. Thank you for this dynamic and informative discussion. And this is going to conclude the formal portion of our panel. But right now, we're going to take some of your questions, and I have them here. Bernardo, you're first. This is from our audience here. As the focus on DEI has heightened in the last 5 years, what are the most significant impacts have you seen within the fragrance industry? And how can we lead as an industry to level the playing field for all?
So I think one of the things that I love that I've seen a shift within the fragrance industry is more women in positions of in important positions, even like perfumers, right? Like mostly it's always been male perfumers, but I feel that's one of the things that I'm the most excited about. But what can we do? I think continue to push these mentorship programs that appoint the right people in the right positions, and you know, allow for smaller brands to shine and give smaller brands opportunity to. If we're talking about, you know, the fragrance industry, I think that it's important to I'm a great example of it, right? I think we haven't been out even a year, and if it weren't for the opportunities that we've received, it wouldn't have given us this platform, and we wouldn't be here today. The voice that it's almost like they gave me this platform for my voice and my inspirations, and I can 100% see how these systems that are in place um, have have helped us. So yeah, those two things.
Wonderful. Nicole.
So in terms of, what's been most impactful is this willingness to, I think, lean in a different way. Shawn talked about reframing the conversation. I think that this entire reframe, and there has been one, I think, in the space of the willingness to lean in. Another really impactful thing that I've seen and that I'm happy about is resources. Companies and organizations being willing to actually set forth resources, and I mean dollars and people, in a way that I don't think that we did necessarily before, and this transparency around what things are and what they aren't, and in terms of how we in the industry continue to lead in this. I think it's all about action, as we talked about before. I think it is what you measure, you accomplish. And so I think it's about setting those goals that we've talked about, and really, again, holding ourselves accountable and really moving forward in impactful, meaningful action.
Indeed. Shawn.
Listen, ditto, ditto, ditto. I would just have to agree with just this level of shift in, mentality, shift in not just word, but in the action, in the deed, and just progress. I know it feels slow, but the things have changed. I know, we measure, we put a goal out to increase our ethnic diversity at our leadership level to 30% by 2025. We're well on our way. That felt really difficult in 2018 and 2019. I feel so much better about it today, having just gone through a review of it. I'm really proud of the work. I think about our supply diversity goals and really shifting that. We're changing the conversation narrative to business diversity. I don't think I could have had that conversation 4 years ago when I started, but today it's very different. To have our social purpose platform and framework in place to help shape the work and have that permeate throughout our organization, it's very different than where it was 4 years ago when it was just a select group of folks really doing that work. It is across our entire business that everyone has a goal that they're marching towards, that they're thinking about. They may not all really understand it to the level and depth that some others do, but they know the goal and they're working towards it and getting better every day. So there is movement, and it's going to take some time, but we are absolutely, I see a shift and a move forward in a way that we made progress in 4 years that I think would have taken us much longer if we didn't have this concerted effort across the industry.
So Shawn, how can we create a more diverse talent pipeline in this industry at all levels and in functions like technical, R&D, marketing, sales?
Yeah, we have to be intentional about it, right? We understand who the customer are. We have to look at that. Then we understand what our overall workforce looks like. And then we have to understand where the gaps are. So what we have done in particular, listen, we've recruited for years diverse talent, but now we're getting very specific and thinking about which HBCUs have programs and majors that really have addressed some of our talent gaps in our organization, be it technology or merchandising. So we're really looking at those schools in concert with CEO Action for Racial Equity, who've done an incredible job analyzing every single HBCU to see where their strengths are and from a major perspective. So we're thinking about how we go and have a target approach with those schools to find the best talent to fill our gaps. We have diverse slates across the board, but we're talking about a level of intentionality around roles and in areas of the business where we know we have real opportunity. There's got to be intention, you got to be focused, you got to put, resource behind it to get that done. That doesn't happen through our traditional norms. Like today, we know where we go, what schools we go to. You have to do something different, but you also have to figure out how to get at it in a very targeted and authentic way. You just can't go and recruit. You have to create relationships with those schools. It is about a 360 approach. So you'd be surprised. The schools just don't want you to show up and just, pluck their people. How are you going to help benefit them and their majors? So there is this real relationship building and establishing that I think is also really important. And we're talking about a long game, a long-term relationship that will be ongoing versus momentary once we fill those gaps. And it's not just about an entry level role. We're talking about also some of our senior roles and where we have gaps. So thinking about not just those who are in undergrad and internship, but really graduate students and alumni who could really play an integral role in our business. So I think being intentional, being targeted and focused is it really important to fill in those pipelines.
That's excellent. Excellent. Nicole.
I think it's exactly, what Shawn says. I think it's the intentionality around it. There was a time when you could just go to, whatever school and you get some candidates and you'd hire them. We made those commitments in 2020 to reach racial equity parity for our Black talent at all levels by 2025. What we did before is not going to get us to those levels. And I'm super proud of, what we've been able to do. We've been strategic in a way that I think we haven't been previously with programs like our program with Howard. Shawn talked about the need to build relationships. Our She's Howard program, and it is a program that we established with the alumni associations around the campus and with the head of alumni affairs to expose alumni, and actually it's for women, alumni to the industry, something that I don't think necessarily had been done before in the way that we did it. A program that we had with Spelman College around Let's Talk Beauty, again, to expose to the industry. And I think that's the other piece about building the pipeline is that we've got to start sooner. We can't wait until college level or until you graduate, from college. We all know that we feel like this is an industry that has not always been or felt like it was welcoming, right, to individuals of diverse backgrounds. And part of that is just a lack of exposure. And so to help build the pipeline, I think we start sooner than graduating from college. Do you start freshman year? Do you even start in junior high school? Creating programs and exposing them and really inviting them to learn about the industry and helping them to understand that they are welcome and that there is a space here. But it is the long game. I think Shawn called it exactly right. It is absolutely the long game. And the last thing I would just say around building the pipeline is that we need to really expand the kind of candidate that we are considering. When you look at job descriptions, there sometimes is implicit bias in a job description, not intentionally written so. And so it automatically disqualifies, those who have been marginalized or excluded. And so start taking a look at job descriptions and really being open about where
Give me an example.
So a degree. So I'll talk about our technical space, right? We really are being focused and intentional in the IT space. And so this idea that you have to have, an undergraduate degree. Oftentimes, people from diverse backgrounds don't necessarily have that undergraduate degree. They may have a certificate. They may have experience that's more than commensurate with what you would have with the degree. So don't automatically discount, those individuals. We've had great success with that. They've come in and done amazing in the organization, but because we were willing to think outside the box and do something and reframe how we're thinking about things. So yeah, I think it's that 360. I think it's, programs. And the last thing I just would say, and Shawn's right, schools don't want you to just come in and take their students, right? To recruit their students. It is all about what kind of impact both ways can you have. And I think that the intentionality around it is so incredibly important, and it's absolutely where we're focused.
Yeah, and it's about fortifying foundations.
That's right.
So we are going to take one more question from our audience, And I'm going to start with you on this one, Nicole, and then Bernardo, then Shawn. And
Can
here's
I
the,
just say
Of
one
course.
thing that I thought of while you were speaking is, of course, there's diversity and inclusion in corporate, right? Which is what we've been talking about. What I can speak from obviously is from more of a creative business owner standpoint, right? Which is how do you create more diversity? Well, I guess my job is through our company's brand message and ethos to spread this message of inclusion and diversity, right? And always, of course, making sure that within our company there are more people from different backgrounds and different experiences and everything. But on one hand, I think that you have to definitely make sure that you have teams that have all kinds of diversity, because that's what really creates evolution. And then on the other hand, is finding that message of inclusivity in everything you do. Because ultimately, I think that we're all the same. We're just different expressions of the same creation. I really think that the difference between the differences that how to explain it? I always get this in Spanish and English because I
say it
try.
in Spanish first. Say it in Spanish first.
I think in Spanish and English all the time. I just think that in order for one consciousness to evolve and not stay stagnant, it has to experience itself in many ways, shapes, forms, good and bad. And in fact, good and bad is just a denomination that us humans, designated. I like to put this analogy because I feel like it helps people understand, how would someone from another planet look at us? If there was somebody from another planet, how would they look at us? And I really think that they would see us as all the same, children of planet Earth. And again, it's part of kind of educating consumers, educating people that you got to understand that we're all the same. Once you it's almost like fixing the root from the problem, where you don't even have to think of putting having certain percentages in place to fix a problem. You know what I mean?
I do know. That makes total sense. And to your point, no one here, as you're saying, Bernardo, we're all the same. We all want to be excellent. We all want the best for ourselves, for our families, for our futures, and for posterity. But no one's asking for shortcuts. We just want access. As we said earlier, you want people to be able to find their voice and have access, which is very important. I think that's what everybody's saying. And I say personally, listen, I'm not looking for a head start. Don't start me, if I'm running a race, don't start me ahead of the other runner. Just give me the same cleats that she's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we are now at this final question from our audience, and Bernardo, I'm going to stay with you since we're here now. And this final question is, what has been the hardest part of your journey in the fragrance industry?
Well, I think definitely manufacturing and supply chain. At least for us, we're a small company. It's just me and my husband. We don't really have investors, so I think keeping up with the growth that House of Bow has had over the past year, that's been challenging for sure. And also connecting with your audience and keeping them engaged in a way that you're not jeopardizing your message because you're trying to sell a product, right? And I think that's one of the things that we always remind ourselves, at least with our team, is like, does it fall back to our message of inclusivity, of authenticity, or are we kind of veering because we're trying to be more like more commercial? So yeah,
that's an excellent point. Nicole?
So patience, because this requires patience, for sure. And then the second thing I would say, the hardest part, and Shawn alluded to this earlier, is trying to help people understand that this idea of equity, diversity, and inclusion in the industry is not a problem to be solved. That is indeed an opportunity. And so getting people to shift their thinking and how we address it, I think has been sort of the biggest challenge. It may continue to be the biggest challenge. There's movement, and I'm proud of the progress that the industry has made, but getting people to understand that this is not a problem to be solved. It really is an opportunity.
Wonderful. So
Well,
Shawn, what has been the hardest part of your journey in the fragrance industry?
Yeah, so listen, I think Ms. Nicole really kind of summed it up, but I would add that it is, again, and go back to something else I said, a long game. And this idea that folks are somewhat fatigued at certain parts of the journey has been a challenge. So how do you continue to re-energize and re-educate and re-inform at every kind of little step of the way to help continue to inform folks about where we're headed and the why, so that they don't become weary in the work? It is personally tough too, right? I think folks forget the idea that as a diverse individual, you're living it every day, but you're also trying to move the organization forward. But I am always encouraged, like I said today, when I think and look at the results and I see people coming along that weren't there last year who, you see the light bulb go off in their head and they understand the bigger picture and what we're here to do for all and not just about a couple of specific groups. That's really important. So I think combating the fatigue, helping folks understand, in celebrating those little moments along the journey so that they don't get fatigued and they see progress, and the along with the progress, right, the movement, but also the progress and the results of that I think is both a challenge and an opportunity as we move forward. So yeah, patience in the long game.
And the challenging opportunity can be rewarding in the end for all. And we will leave it there. Shawn Outler, Nicole Monson, and Bernardo Möller, thank you so much. I'm Arthel Neville on behalf of the Fragrance Foundation. Thank you for your engagement. And now back to our fearless leader, Linda Levy.
Thank you, Arthel. I have to tell you that Sharnae and I are sitting here and just trying not to cry and get all choked up. This has been amazing. I want to thank each of you on this amazing panel. You are truly inspiring. Thank you, Arthel, for leading this discussion. But Bernardo, Nicole, Shawn, and all of our viewers, I know, have benefited. I also want to take the moment to go back one more time and thank Helen Shelton. When I came into this position, I had a lot of responsibility and I had a lot of experience, but I did not have experience in DEI. So Helen, you're out there, I'm sending you a big hug, because that's what really made today happen. And with Sharnae Jackson, without crying, we really got together and said, this Fragrance Foundation has done great stuff. We've had awards, we've had banquets, we've been networking, but what have we really done? So no matter what happens in the year 2022, right now we are on a journey. It is an opportunity, like you said, and we will not stop. We are dedicated to this cause. So today's event is the continuation and ongoing evolution of our work to advance and increase industry diversity. And I'm going to keep saying it, we will not stop. I still meet people in the industry who think that this is not even an issue. So there is a lot of work ahead, but it's by helping the conversation to continue that we're going to get where we need to go. It's going to go on for another 70, 100 years. So let's continue together to move forward together by taking the hashtag Fragrance Forward DEI pledge. This is a signatory pledge which we created, in which the Fragrance Foundation is literally pledging to commit ourselves to be aligned with throughout. And by taking these actionable steps to make our industry true and measurably inclusive. I know that I can't thank you enough, Arthel, from helping us go through this conversation today. All of you panelists, we're going to keep going. I always have my choke up moment. I guess it's just part of who I am, but it's because we're really doing something. And until they out there all think we are the ERG in the fragrance industry, I'm not done yet. So thanks for being with us today. This continues. And by the way, happy anniversary to all of us, because it was exactly 1 year ago that we had the first conversation, and it's just going to keep going. I can't thank you enough, but I will now. Thanks a lot. See you next time.
I commit to being fragrance forward by holding myself and my company accountable at all levels to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion. I commit to breaking barriers for people of all backgrounds and launching, growing, and sustaining careers in the fragrance industry. I commit to actionable steps to broadening my perspective, changing my workplace, and changing the industry.
That concludes our session, but today together, we are taking steps and taking action. I encourage all of you to help us spread the message. Also, please be sure to complete the survey we will be sharing with all participants in the coming days. You can help us move forward by answering those questions. But for now, I leave you with this. Be a part of this movement today, together, and moving forward. #FragranceForward TFF.